Hello, hello. Welcome back to another conversation. I'm your host, Robbie Ferguson. Today, co-hosting with me, I have Christine, who's
Hi.
joining us today. And our guest is David Strange.
Hi.
David has been around for quite a while here with the Bullitt County History Museum and has a lot of information, a lot of stories that I'm excited to hear. And
Yeah, absolute wealth of knowledge. David, we were talking a little before we started recording, but can you give us, are you a Bullitt County native?
No, but knowledge comes with being old partly too, so I'm doing that at 70. But I'm originally from Okolona area of Jefferson County, went to high school there. Wife and I moved out here in about 1976. But all through my teenage years, I'd be out here too with friends and stuff too. So I've kind of grown up in Bullitt County too.
Yeah. Well, have you always been a history buff?
Yes, I had a great history teacher in high school, and I've always tied back to that he had kind of inspired me because I've never been one to do, you might think of the same thing, but I never liked the dates where you had to just mechanically remember history dates. You want the time frame, and that works for me better. And he was good at that. He was good at just laying out the storyline of what things were happening in history. And that always fascinated me. So I've been doing that, liking that since high school. Worked at GE for my real life and got to retire fairly early there, which has allowed me to do what I really like to do, which is history, especially local history. I like local history.
yeah, because Bullitt County is really actually super rich with history. There's a lot of important things that happened here in our county.
Some key things to the state, but I'm one who just likes kind of personal history. Everybody's got history. Every family has history. The more you delve into your genealogy or whatever, everybody's always fascinated with somebody in their family line. So I like that kind of stories and things like just why did they used to paint trees white, or why when in the 40s and 50s and into the 60s, still occasionally you'll see where people paint trees up 6 feet high or fence posts and things like that. And they used to do that a lot. And there's all kinds of fascinating stories of why, but most of them, it's not why. It was that everybody was doing it at the time. But that kind of thing, which is not world changing, but it's just things of, well, why did they do that?
Right.
I remember.
Why did they do that?
It was actually what most people would argue with me on, but what it really came down to was before there was so much lighting, street lights and things like that came along in the 60s and then on, and we're used to that now at our age. But before that, there was almost no light. Once I looked into that, I was discovering it. A tree painted white, or you look at the old pictures of the 40s and all the telephone poles are painted white on the first few feet. It's so you could see them.
Just so you can see them.
And in absolute dark, the light shows up.
Yeah.
My dad used to always paint the trees in the yard. You paint all the trees in the yard that white. And I'd ask him why. He said, "Oh, that's to fight bugs." And I checked into that more with him, pressed him, and said, well, really, it was because everybody else was painting their trees. It was just a style as much as anything in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
But you used to see that everywhere. And again, if you look at the old 1940s or so photographs, you'll see that a lot. Like, why? But it was really a practical thing. You could see them more in the dark when you're out there.
Yeah, it caught on because other people were doing it.
Yeah, and then mostly it was everybody's doing it, so you did it.
Like, we got to get out there and paint them, right?
Yeah. And the thing, though, that I should say on that is you do not actually paint it. You whitewash them. Paint will kill the tree.
I was
It'll
thinking
actually
that.
kill the tree.
Yeah.
So it's like some sort of white spray or...
There's a whitewash. I'm trying to think. It's calcium-based paint, but not the oil-based paint. You don't want to do that.
Right. Huh.
Hey, so our cities here in Shepherdsville, Mount Washington, Lebanon Junction, there's a history there to their names too, right?
Yeah.
Why are we called? Why is it called Shepherdsville, Mount Washington? Would they?
Yeah, and there's actually 8 cities in Bullitt County, and you usually think of Shepherdsville, Mount Washington, Lebanon Junction. Those are the 3 old cities. The others in northern Bullitt County, those came along in the 50s and afterward, real boom in the 70s with the coming of the big factories in Jefferson County, Ford plant, General Electric plant factory, International Harvester. As those came in, you got booms of people that all of a sudden were getting paid nice middle income wages, and they could afford a house for a change. And a lot of them moved out to Bullitt County to start, and that's where we got a lot of subdivisions, which then became cities. And there was a real boom. When I was a kid, so long ago, Bullitt County was just a population of like 18,000 people. But now we're pushing about 90,000.
Yeah.
And that change makes Bullitt County itself so different than a lot of counties that have kind of been the same rural population. This boom, really from an overflow from Jefferson County, has put a lot of pressures on the county, as you all know, with the roads and infrastructure and growth affecting people.
Yeah.
So many people have came out because they like the fields and the greenery. But unfortunately, 60,000 people have done that. And so it's a challenge to all of our infrastructure and our county government today.
I do remember in the 80s when I was a little kid out here, it was way country out here. Like because I left from the Iroquois area where I lived with my mom, and I would come out here to where my dad was at. And it was like, we're going to a whole nother world because it was country. There was cows all over the place. We don't really see that now like we did then.
You're exactly right. I very much remember not so long ago, as you say, the 80s doesn't seem that long ago
Doesn't
to me.
seem that long ago.
But 80s, 90s, it was nothing to drive along any road and see cows and horses and stuff. And now almost never do you
Almost never.
see.
And it makes me think, I don't even know that our kids I even care about cows. When I'm always like, we'll go down the road, we'll be on a road trip or something. I'm like, oh, there's some cows. I'm like,
Yeah.
So for me as a little kid, I was like, oh, there's cows. But they're like, I don't really care.
And why are we fascinated with those things? But nature, there's just something
humongous.
you see. Now you still see deer, which is great.
Yeah.
Armadillos now. That we're getting armadillos is a new thing to
Really?
the county. Yeah,
That's
they've
weird.
been expanding from the west. So occasionally see one of those once in a while. So there's still, we're still rural enough that there's quite a bit of still country living, but not nearly what there was. Another example of that is when I was young again, I guess this was 60s and 70s. In those years, there was actually one flashing red light was the only traffic light in Bullitt County. And there's actually a little argument of which one was really first. There was one in Shepherdsville, and there's one in Mount Washington at the main intersections there. And it was literally just one flashing red light, just a stoplight. A number of years ago now, I got curious, as I tend to do, and I'm just going to drive around and see how many there are. And I counted something like 386.
And new ones going up all the time.
That's 6 or 7 at one intersection. But there's 40 or so major intersections now with traffic lights, and so much more traffic, as we all know.
Yes.
But that's a change in the county. You asked a minute ago about the names of the towns and all. But yeah, Shepherdsville, of course, is the county seat. And it's there because of the crossing Highway 61 in Bullitt County and then through Jefferson County up to the Ohio River was actually a buffalo trail originally. And a good portion of Highway 44 was as well. And so it was actually buffalo, proper term is bison, but a buffalo trail. And Native Americans, of course, would follow that. It's a good hunting path as well. Pioneers, when they came into the state, they started traveling that, and then they would widen it to horse width and wagon width, and now we have the highway. So to this day, though they've been straightened out a lot, to this day there's bends in the road that I've often joke about. It's probably just some buffalo saw a flower somewhere and walked over to it, and all the others followed it.
Right.
And so that's where our major roads are from. But that road, which is now Highway 61, but that animal path crossed a ford at the Salt River. and that became a good place to stop and camp and became Shepherdsville. Lowland has a little bit of trouble with flooding, but it's moved out from the original base there right at the crossing of the river. But that's where Shepherdsville comes from. It was created before there was a county. Mount Washington was one of the old ones as well, and one of the jokes of remembering of it was actually originally called Hell's Kitchen.
Yes.
Hell's Kitchen, that's right.
And it close by there.
And then a crossroads or something, right?
Yeah, Crossroads. So there's now Crossroads Elementary School and things named. That's where that name comes from. And it was where what we know now as Bardstown Road and Highway 44 crossed. And so one was from Louisville to Bardstown and on further that direction, and the other 44, of course, crossed toward Taylorsville, what is Taylorsville now. And those two paths became roads, and the crossroads there is why Mount Washington's there.
You know, and before 65 came in, I could imagine that Preston or Buckman Street, and of course all the way down Bardstown Road, pretty major routes going towards E-Town and going towards Bardstown, right?
Yeah. Bullitt County has always been a transportation hub, as we know nowadays. The warehouses and stuff are such a big thing because of the I-65 and different our location and our traveling. But that's always been the case. Originally, it was Salt River. That's why people were here in the first place there, and for the salt making industry. But transportation-wise, we had a river, and that was handy. Then railroads came in 1855 or so. What was L&N Railroad now? I'm not sure if it's called that now. I doubt it.
No, yeah, now it's CSX.
But that was 1855. That was a major railroad, still is to this day. So that was running right through the middle of the county, and right sort of parallel to that, then they built Interstate 65, originally Kentucky Turnpike. When they started building that, by the way, Happy Chandler was running for governor, I think it was. I won't get this story exactly right. But one of his campaign things was against that, because it's a waste of money. It's that it'll never be used, and now hundreds of thousands of cars every day go down that road. It's crazy. But so that transportation there, that's a big thing of it, and that ties in. And the railroad went down through the other town, Lebanon Junction, which we talk of. Most people don't realize that was the biggest city in Bullitt County.
It was a major hub.
Yeah, because of the railroad, the intersection for the railroad. When things changed, when they switched from steam-powered locomotives to diesel, you didn't really need that stop. That used to be a major stop for the railroad to get water and reload for heading up Muldrow Hill. That was a major push. With diesels came along, they could do longer distance, and so Lebanon Junction kind of slowed down after that.
It did. It took a pretty hit after that change, and it changed the whole city.
Yeah, and it was affected. I've always said it was a key thing too in our more recent history was in the 1971 or so, when Bullitt County Schools consolidated 3 high schools, and we had a high school in Lebanon Junction, one in Shepherdsville, and one in Mount Washington. And they were pretty rural type high schools. I mean, graduated like 50 people or something like that. And in 1971, school systems saw fit to consolidate us all into what's Bullitt Central High School now, and make it a modern one where they could afford to have the labs and all the things that you do in a modern high school nowadays. There was a lot of consternation on that, and it was a real hurt. In my mind, it was a real hurt to Lebanon Junction, because their high school was their key community thing. And when they took that away, they kind of took a heart away from them. I think. And, so good people down there, but that hurt them more than the rest of the county. Of course, today we got 3 high schools again as the expansion of the population.
Yeah, it seems like that's been 3 high schools even whenever I was out here in high school there.
Yeah, of course, they had Bullitt Central, then Mount Washington, and then eventually you had Bullitt.
I think North Bullitt came in there in late.
I said Mount Washington, but Bullitt Central, Bullitt East, and then North Bullitt.
Yeah, I think North Bullitt wasn't built until like 79 or something like that.
Something like that.
It was like it took a while for it came, because it was a newer school, I believe, whenever my aunt went there in the 80s.
Yeah, nowadays it's a challenge that I would love to see a high school down in the southern, around Lebanon
Yeah,
Junction, but there's just not the population down there
Right.
to justify it. Yeah.
It's a little bit, it's a little bit stagnant down in LJ.
Sleepy town. I like
very
to call it a
sleepy.
sleepy town.
Very sleepy there, and it doesn't seem like there's very much wanting to grow.
Yeah, seems to be some of a desire to just keep it sleepy
Keep it
town.
the
And
way
there's
it is.
something to that. I remember being so impressed one time down there, and on the main street, right in the center of town, some kids were playing baseball or playing some kind of a ball game on the street. And it was obvious they weren't really needing to look for cars. There just wasn't any traffic. That's boomed a little more now, and is expected to boom quite a bit with the new Ford battery plants that's going on down south.
Yeah,
of
have you
there.
seen that place?
Oh, huge! As far as you can see, development
Humongous it
down
is.
there.
It's gonna
around
be-
Glendale. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be super cool. What an opportunity. I could imagine it bringing in a lot of jobs south of, right south of us. So, I mean,
It brings its challenges and its opportunities both. Some people they want the green fields and the cows and horses we talked about. But
we still have green fields, cows, and horses. They didn't get rid of all of them. They just, in that spot, they're going to be,
I actually like the some development. When I was first out here, everything closed down at 5 or 6 o'clock. I mean, certainly after 6 o'clock, there's not really any point in getting out because all the stores were closed. Everything closed on Wednesdays and Sundays.
really.
I've wrote a story at one time called Blue Sundays, what used to and up until the 70s. 70s was a big change in a lot of things. There was just an understanding, really, and law as well, I think, at one time, that you just didn't open on Sundays. You went to church.
What about Why Wednesday?
I found out about that. That was odd enough because I asked around a number of the old business owners, and I thought it was like middle of the week. But there was a couple things. They were trying to stick to like 40 hours a week, and they wanted to be open on Saturday because all the farmers and then families came into town to shop on Saturday. And so they would be open on Saturday. So, well, that's 6 days. What do we do? And they say, let's close another day. What it comes down to, what I was told was that from a number of owners, is they like to play golf then. Some of the owners and
they
the
wanna play
lawyers and the
golf.
doctors and whatever, they like to play golf on Wednesday, and it became kind of the custom. So they were closed, so everybody else closed, and it was just the day you weren't open on Wednesdays. So we just kind of knew it. There's a few places that still do that. And of course, a lot of churches had or have services on Wednesday night, a prayer meeting type thing, especially a lot of the Protestant ones. So they just call that whole day off. And everybody knew not to have meetings on Wednesday nights because there was church.
Yeah.
I do remember a time whenever it was Sunday. I don't know if it was just in my house or if that's just the way it was, but I'd want to go to the store, say, hey, can we go to the store? And they're like, no, stores are closed on Sunday. And everything was closed on Sunday. It was the worst day of the week because you couldn't do nothing. You had to stay at home. Nothing was open.
Yeah.
And I do remember that. And I always felt like that was.
It was interesting, though, because everybody knew everything was closed.
Yeah, they knew it was closed.
Today, as you guys with your work and everything too, here at Ferguson's and all, the people expect you to service them right away, whatever day it is. Where back then, everybody knew everything was closed Sunday. You just accepted it, so you didn't even ask.
It just was.
Yeah.
And you just did other things.
You planned differently.
Yeah.
There's that.
You mentioned a minute ago that you wrote an article. When did you become involved with the Bullitt County History Museum?
Well, I was, again, very fortunate. I got to retire from real work. Engineering, machinery is what I used to work with at 50 years old. And as I did that, what was that, 2003, at that time, the county was looking to tear down the county courthouse and rebuild a new one, new jail and all of that. And history people, of course, didn't like that. They wanted to keep the classic old courthouse, but it was in really bad shape. And so they were talking about that. And as part of that, there's some people will know of the old stone jail. There's still an old 20-foot by 20-foot jail that's there. And they were talking whether to tear that down. And so I was looking for something to do and I liked history. So I asked the judge executive at the time, hey, can I work with that? See what I can do? Sure, go for it. So I spent about a year restoring that and bringing in some other people, and we worked and cleaned it all up. And it had survived just out of stubbornness, really. It's built in 1880 or something like that, and for about 50 years it had been just sitting there. But it was still there. It's just so bulky with its big stones and ironwork that nobody could tear it up. So we worked on that. As I was working on that, I was noticing the Bullitt County Genealogical Society, the Bailey family, Barbara and Ken Bailey, and some others were working to try to save the courthouse. And so I got involved in that, and they did a good job. One of the best partnerships I've seen was that the history folks and the county folks, county government folks, ended up resolving the issue of whether to tear down a building. And it was in terrible shape. It really was. So they did tear down a good portion of the county courthouse, but they kept the front facade and the front rooms. And as part of that deal, a couple of great things came out of it. Was the county then allowed the Bullitt County Genealogical Society to make that into a museum, first ever Bullitt County Museum, for a place to put artifacts and all. And then the county went further, and when they built the new part of the building, they made it match the old part. That's actually rare. Most of the time, you'll see these conversions where there's a big modern section added on to the old section. But they did a really good job on that and built that. And so, October, I think it was, 2004, we opened as a Bullitt County History Museum in those rooms. And I was selected to be the director of that. And I was director for about 10 years doing that until I kind of wanted to move on doing some other things. And we've prospered really good. Sherry Hatter is the director right now, doing a great job with that.
It's such a jewel, and I'm so grateful as a history lover myself that we had people like you that helped bring that together, because anytime I'm at the courthouse, I stop by and look in the rooms, and it's just wonderful.
One of the great things of that was, and what's really made it is some really great volunteers. We have good, devoted volunteers, which is actually rare in those sort of things. But that's what keeps it going well. I don't mind grabbing credit some, but they're really what keeps it going. Somebody has to be there all the time, so it's a challenge to do those things. But one of the best feelings of that was early on, about a year into having the museum, a couple of the government leaders, a janitor at the time actually came up, Dave, you got to come down here and listen to this. And a couple of government leaders were down there, and as people would walk in the building, say, hey, have you seen our museum? You know, and so they were proud of what we were doing, and that really felt good. And we like to think of a thing too of usually when you go in a courthouse, you're not going there for fun. You've got something serious going on. So we like that. We've seen a lot of people that come in, they haven't paid their taxes, and they're coming in with a frown, but they get looking around at our artifacts and things, and we're proud of our displays, and they'll leave smiling a lot of times. They'll be so it's a pleasant thing.
It is a great asset. It is a great one. I mean, there's so much stuff in there. In there, one of the things in there is where Bullitt County used to have its own television, news. What was that?
We did have a radio station at one time, but one thing we've got there is the first TV in Bullitt County.
The TV.
And that's from Lebanon Junction again. Lebanon Junction hardware store, Marsden's hardware store. At the time, he was selling some electrical appliances. Electricity was just coming in and stuff in some areas. But he actually had, as you sometimes see in old movies or something, he had a TV setting in the window, and people would come by to see that amazing TV station. And things. So we've actually got that from Steve Marsden as the first, pretty well documented, the first TV in Bullitt County.
Wow.
Is that wow?
Something that I really love is the working toll booth where you can throw change in and the light comes on. Oh, I love that.
It's the ding thing. And there was a funny story to that, is that we got that early on. And as it turned out, I had a pretty good friend in the highway department as we were starting. And I had seen one of those in the State History Museum in Frankfurt. And I mentioned to him, could I possibly get a toll booth? I-65, a lot of people don't remember, that used to be a toll road.
Right.
So a lot of stories on that too. But sticking to this one, I asked this friend about getting a toll booth, and believe we could do that. Give me a few days, and so about a week later, he called me. He said, we got one.
Wow.
Would you like that? And I realized then, because I was using the wrong terminology, I was saying a whole booth, the whole booth.
Oh, you're the whole.
Oh,
And he was saying, now I need you to know, we need a space to pull up the semi-trailer truck to unload for you.
oh my.
And so sure, we'll make space and just come in. Why do we need a semi-trailer for this, 2 foot by 2 foot thing? So no, we got the whole booth, 14 foot by 7 foot tall by 6 foot wide booth, the whole thing. And so I immediately first joked with our county judge then, Kenny Rigdon, and joked with him about, well, that would look really good in the hallway. He didn't think it was all that funny.
Yeah.
But, so we did get it corrected before it showed up, and they made up a mock-up and used the main coin thing.
Oh, wow.
I remember as a teenager when it was the toll roads and having that basket where you throw at Shepherdsville was the five nickels, 25 cents you threw your coin in. And I was coming out to date a girl out here and had my little 1965 Corvair was my first car. And I had a quarter, I had 5 nickels for the toll, $1 for gas, and $1 for the date.
Yeah.
And that was enough at that time, sort of. But I pulled up to the toll booth being so cool, tossed my 5 nickels in, being a cool guy. All 5 of them hit the rim of that basket and bounced off and rolled under the car. And at that time, I was so green of a person, I thought I'd go to prison for life if I didn't get that money in the booth. So I had to get out in the road and dig up the nickels and get them back in there. Not a great date. But,
Well, and something else they had, and of course, I know this just from learning the history of the county, is a restaurant, right there in the middle.
Yeah, it used to be in the median between in the expressway between the north and south lanes. There was one in Shepherdsville, and there's one down Lebanon Junction area
Was
too.
there?
And a lot of people, it's fading now as time is going on, but it used to be just about everybody had worked there when they were a teenager or something. 2 gas stations, a nice restaurant, and a hotel. And a lot of the people would try to work there because they would get to use the swimming pool that was at the hotel too.
Okay.
That was a perk if you worked there. But yeah, that was there. For those of us that was around, you could still see some signs of it. I recognize a couple of trees and things, but the whole road's been radically changed now, of course.
Yeah,
over
because
years.
I can't imagine it, of course. But
Yeah, and it's kind of neat to see the old pictures. A lot of this you can find, these stories you can find on our website, by the way. Bullitt County History Museum website is bullittcountyhistory.org, and do a search there. We're very proud of all the stuff that's right there that anybody can access.
yeah, you should be. I love that website. I read a great story about Lebanon Junction back in its heyday. It was put under a government-mandated quarantine because it was such a travel hub, and I can't remember what it was at the time, if it was smallpox or something, but there was some type of communicable disease that was being spread throughout that hub, and the town, they didn't want to shut down the hub because it was such a huge transportation boom that the government had to come in and say, hey, you have to quarantine, you are spreading this throughout the area. And I just learned about it all on the website, and I thought, my goodness, how interesting is this?
Yeah, there's been some of those things through the years when, of course, we've just in the last years went through the COVID thing and all of the issues with that. But there was a big, in 1918, this, what we call the Spanish flu, I think.
Right.
But it really didn't originate in Spain. It just kind of misinterpreted there.
Right.
But that killed millions of people.
Yeah.
And, of course, millions more in the COVID thing. But there's been others. You go through some of these old cemeteries in the county. By the way, people are often surprised. There's some 380 cemeteries in Bullitt County.
Wow.
You think there might, you can pick on your hand 3 or 4 major ones, but there's little family cemeteries every place from the old farms. But you go through some of those cemeteries, and you'll find a lot of people dying at the same time. And it was often after a flood or something, and the sanitation levels had dropped really badly, and everybody got, my mind's blank of what disease that was, but a lot of people would die all of a sudden from the issues from the lack of sanitation.
Oh, like colon.
Oh, yeah, I know. I can't remember what it's called either.
Yeah, I'm stuck too.
Dysentery, maybe? Is it dysentery? And that might not be right. I don't remember.
But if you get noticed in some of the tombstones, a lot of times there'll be a whole family of the same date had died, and
Right.
some awful sad times of those. There was one sickness that went through one time. Seems like it was just after the Civil War, but you would actually go to. It was known that you to go to a house sometimes, and the whole family was dead. They were in the house dead. It was hitting them so quickly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been some rough times through the county. Of course, everywhere has those, but we survived and prospering pretty good right now.
Yeah. There's a lot of great historical markers that I know that you've worked hard to preserve. A few that come to mind are the schoolhouses there next to the Board of Education.
Yeah.
And the lone grave, I know that you worked to restore the fencing and all of that.
That's a good one. Again, the stories are on our website, and we have a display at the museum about it. But at one time, we know now of a conference center, Paraquet Springs Conference Center in Shepherdsville. But that's named after Paraquet Springs Resort that was really big in Bullitt County in 1840s up to, off and on, up to even 1920. There was still something there. But in the 1840s or so, there was people came from many states to come there as a resort and to drink the mineral waters, the spring waters that were there. And a big thing, 700 room hotel, 700 capacity, pretty big place, really big for those days. The Lone Grave is a great little romantic story there where two young people met at that springs in 1840 or so, and so they had planned to remarry or to get married, to meet back there the next season, the next year at Paraquet Springs and get married. But when they separated then to go their own ways to meet again later, when he got back home, he was called up to the war, the Mexican-American War, and supposedly he died in that war. And so the romantic version of the story of that is that she pined away, brokenhearted, and she eventually died, and her dying request was to be buried at Paraquet Springs next to the tree where they had fallen in love. And so she is buried there, one lone grave, surrounded with an iron fence. And she wanted the iron fence so no one else would disturb her grave, but the spirit of her loved lover could come through to see her.
Gives me chills.
It's a neat story.
Yeah.
So that's still there. It's on private land, a little hard to get to, but it's there. So Paraquet Springs, named after a South Carolina parakeet that used to be really prevalent in this area. Beautiful, multicolored parakeet, like you would see of a parrot in the South somewhere.
Interesting.
But they were all killed out to well, there's none of them left, and for the feathers. For ladies' hats.
Oh my goodness!
They were killed for ladies' hats and killed to extinction.
I've always been curious where paraquet got its name.
Yeah, and it's an odd spelling, so people often wonder how to pronounce it. And I think I'm right. That's the way I've always pronounced it, is paraquet rather than paraquat, which would be what it would look like.
Right. Well, given that you've seen so much change happen in our county, a lot of people are resistant to the change, but what do you feel like is some of the most positive things you've seen come from the growth of our county?
Oh, yeah, I touched on that a bit ago in a way that, when it was rural, it's wonderful, but there ain't nothing here when in rural, if you want to do something, as you said earlier, and you would have to always go to Louisville for anything. And so some stores and restaurants coming in, I like that, to be able to run just up the street to get something. So there is that great convenience. The restaurants, there used to be just one restaurant in town, a great mom and pop restaurant, but that was all. And I remember the first hamburger joint coming in. First name brand was Dairy Queen, which became Druthers eventually. Some might remember that. And today that same building is Taco Bell is there in Shepherdsville. But that was the first name brand hamburger place. And not long after that, McDonald's came in with one, and then now we've got all sorts of restaurants. And so it's nice to be able to just go up the street and get something to eat.
Yeah.
Used to couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the name of that? I thought it was Morton's General Store. It's the gray building, catty corner from the old Bullitt County's bank.
That's going to be tore down before long.
That's going to be tore down.
Actually, and probably should be. It's in
It's in
terrible,
bad shape.
terrible shape.
It's in really bad shape.
Yeah,
But that building has a lot of history too, doesn't it? What is that?
It's actually the source of my favorite old picture in the county. There's a picture of that when it was still a new building, and I'm thinking it's the Merriman brothers that had it as a hardware store, general store originally, 1920 or so. And there's a picture, a great picture of the two brothers standing outside with the items out on the sidewalk and sidewalk sale signs in the windows and everything new and shiny. And they're so proud. You can just tell they're just beaming with their business. And great detail to that picture. So that's actually my favorite picture of any that we've got. We've got some 14,000 photographs in our archives at the museum, by the way. But so that old building, that's going to be cleared away as expansion for the city park that's being going on now.
It's time. I couldn't say that I felt like about the Victorian houses that was up there where AutoZone was, but for this building, I do feel like it is time. It's like it doesn't. All the historical value can be read about because the building itself is pretty decrepit looking.
Yeah, and one could argue that it should have been taken care of before, but there you are. Time does its thing. I'm kind of a pragmatic historian. I think that some things have to go.
They do.
Keep some, but let some go, and you can't keep everything.
Well, I'm hoping with the new park that it's able to change the look of that downtown Shepherdsville, which is really just that one street, changing that look of that place and maybe more.
Just bring some life to it.
Yeah, bring some life, some boutiques, some little places just to walk.
Yeah, kind of an. Haven't heard them use the term, but kind of an urban renewal thing too.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited about all the things that they're doing in Shepherdsville now.
Yeah.
And Mount Washington's been doing a lot of that for some years too.
Mount Washington's doing
got
great.
some great parks and things.
Oh, their park. I love their park out there.
Yeah.
It is really neat.
It's a great asset for the county too because it brings in traveling sports teams and people look for facilities like that, and I'm sure it's bringing in some tourism dollars.
Yeah, they have
and
the
things
amphitheater,
like that.
concerts.
Oh yeah, the concerts, everything.
I love the attitude, and it's becoming flourishing again now. It's not always been the case, but that we can do this.
Right.
Let's do more. And I've been disappointed from time to time, and through the years, once in a while, the attitude seemed to have been that that's good enough. We don't need to build anything real nice, just sheet metal building or something. That's good enough. And I'm encouraged when people start saying, "Oh, we can do better than that. We can, and we can, and it makes it so much better."
Yeah.
Shepherdsville is such a great location. I mean, we're 20 minutes from downtown Louisville. The UPS hub, super close. We got tons of these warehouses that are popping up. So the opportunity for growth right here in Shepherdsville, I feel like we're on the going up.
Well, the new hospital developing,
Yes.
with U of L Hospital at the northern part of the county is a great thing. Worked with that a little bit all through the years, and it's been, it seems like about a 20-year struggle on that. But U of L came in making that a really neat place there, a nice facility. Right there at that location, by the way, going back to the old history, pioneer days, what was his name? But I believe he was the state attorney general at the time, and when there were still Indian fights going on and things, was ambushed there and killed. Hillman and another person were killed right at that spot. There's a history marker there about it. But it's hard sometimes to look back and all these wonderful things coming in and thinking what this was like at one time when it was just a wilderness.
Sure.
There's a couple houses down toward a Boy Scout camp, what would you say, southeast part of the county, I guess. But down just a little further south than them, there's a road down that way. And you go back there, and it's still one of the few roads, it's actually a private road now, one of the few roads when you get a real feeling of what it would have been like in a wilderness. And there's a log cabin, too, actually, log cabins back there that are from those days.
Wow.
And I haven't seen it in a long time. As I recall, there's even a couple of rifle slits and things.
Yeah.
And when they were there, the family that would have been living there was nobody else in the area. I mean, you're living there, you're trying to start a farm, and you might get some Native Americans come by,
Right.
maybe friendly, maybe not.
Right.
But if you hurt yourself, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there is no hospital to go to. There's not even another neighbor to go to,
Right.
hardly for 50 miles to
Right.
get to.
And that would be south of the Salt River too, right? So I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I
well
could
south.
imagine Salt River being an obstacle in different times. It being a pretty big obstacle to get across.
Well,
It's
you're on your own.
challenging river. Sometimes it's so shallow you can
Mm-hmm.
walk across it easy without getting your ankles wet. Hardly you can walk across. Other times it's 30 foot deep and,
Right.
and rolling,
Mm-hmm.
dangerous. Yeah, there used to be a mill there on the river. A guy built in the 1800s built a dam across the Salt River at Shepherdsville to power a big wheel that would be an ironworks, that they actually heated up the iron from a couple of the iron furnaces that are in this area, and it would raise up a big hammer that would come down and knock the iron and kind of make it, hammer it in place. And it was productive for a while, but it's odd to me that they didn't think about this, because everybody that's lived around the Salt River knows it floods.
Right.
And it flooded.
Yeah.
So he spent his fortune building this dam and mill. Within a couple of years, apparently, no more than 5, it got washed
Wow.
away.
Washed away.
Yeah, and so he lost his, and he was a pretty big guy in the county at the time.
Yeah.
Actually, he helped pay for or donated the land, whatever, for I believe it was Hebron Church, Hebron Presbyterian Church up in the north part of the county, but he lived up that way.
Yeah.
Was there another like a thing similar to that down in Claremont? Some kind of furnace.
Oh yeah, an iron furnace. The cool things, it's the only one left, is the called the Belmont furnace. Kind of a pyramid shape, about 30 foot tall, 30 foot wide. It's an impressive old structure, really. And when we're thinking, the county right now is working with the owners. We've been working on this for a lot of years, but it looks like it's coming together where the county and the owners are going to develop that into where the county oversees that and makes it kind of a little park down there to protect it.
Is that on private land too?
It is, but it's going to be, if it goes through, that's going to be leased to the county, $1 a year type thing, and the county's going to develop a few things around it and put a better access to it and all of that.
That'd be great.
So yeah, we've been doing that. Dr. Greg Coons is the owner of the land. Has been a great protector of it for as long as I can remember. But he, like me, is getting older, and so we've been extra concerned that it would be that somebody would be protecting it after we're gone. So looks like it's going to happen. We hope it will.
What are some other things here in the county that you feel like that people would want to see?
Yeah, let me tell you about devil wagons.
Yeah.
I just looking here and noticing that. But in this day, as you all know, I've got an electric car, and I'm kind of an advocate of those. Not that everybody should have them, but they have their pluses, and I'm really loving mine. But they get a lot of resistance. It's a different thing, and you get a lot of negativity and resistance to it. But in 1908, gas cars were just becoming around. And there was actually a legislator, Representative W.M. Thompson represented Bullitt and Spencer County in 1908. And he was just thinking this was a horrible thing of gasoline cars coming. And so he suggested a law to the legislature that would require that, you couldn't go faster than 3 miles an hour if you had these devil wagons, is what he called them.
Oh, wow.
And of course, then they were like people would think of electric cars today. They've got their glitches and their things, and they were kind of backfiring and noisy back then. And so it was scaring horses, he said. And these things were terrible. And so the law would have required that a man must walk in front of the car, 100 yards in front of the car, to warn people that the car was coming.
Oh, my.
Couldn't go more than 3 miles an hour. And that was going to be the requirement for cars. If you had a car, you had to do those things.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine? Yeah, yeah. And obviously that law didn't pass
Yeah.
because we're not walking in front of, on the expressway, walking in front of cars now. But that's, so things, people don't like change. And there was that.
Yeah.
He was only in the legislature for 2 years, by the way. He didn't win re-election, so it might have been that popular a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Bardstown Road, which is so busy nowadays, in 1925 is when they first built Bardstown Road as a real road, a real fast road. Up to then, it was just kind of a trail and a small road. But they built it then, and they were in the newspapers. They were so proud of this wonderful Bardstown Road, 1925, that you could probably go as fast as 40 miles an hour if on that road.
Yeah.
And that's some of us still remember that windy old road. Now most of that's been straightened out to a 4-lane. But go as fast as 40 miles. They were so proud of that.
I imagine though a lot of the cars that was on the market at the time, that 40 miles per hour. I used to have an S10, and I get on the expressway, and the odometer only went to. The speedometer only went to 80. And if you got it up to like 50 or 60 on the expressway, you felt
like
it.
it.
You felt it different. Like in my car, I can be going 80, and I can't tell. But then I could tell. I was like, I'm on a rocket on the expressway. So I could imagine in one of those old time cars there where they didn't have all the
those 1930s, 40s
no
cars.
seat belts, no air conditioning.
gosh,
no.
Right.
You just hold on
Like,
and go.
40 is good enough.
Grab a lever to stop it, I guess, handbrake.
People couldn't hardly imagine going any faster.
Sure.
Yeah, it'd be crazy. Like, whoa, we're going, even to get in at like 15 or 20,
Yeah.
if somebody's horse is beside you and you're going past it, it'd be wild and scary.
So those things have changed so much, and our thinking on those things changed so much, to the point again. It's a lot of it is in how society adjusts. That those times you knew you didn't travel that much far. You didn't go very far because you couldn't. Before the cars, of course, the horses. It would take days to get to Louisville,
Right.
or to get to Frankfurt. In fact, one of the things I'm not sure this is true, but I've always heard it, that one of the reasons Kentucky has 120 counties, has a lot of counties, is they weren't laid out eventually all at the same time. For example, Bullitt was originally taken from a piece of Jefferson County and a piece of Nelson County, but generally they're laid out with a thought that you could get to the courthouse in a day on your horse, and that's what I've heard before was the thinking of that. So a lot of states most states don't have nearly that many counties, but that was kind of the thinking on that. And of course now, you can go to Bowling Green or something without hardly thinking about it. You just hop in your car.
Can you imagine though getting on a horse and if you had to go to Louisville and you lived out here? My grandparents always called it going to town. We're going to go to town, which could mean
Big thing.
Could mean Louisville. It could mean Shepherdsville. It just meant we was leaving the farm out there and going to town. It was always a journey time. As everybody get ready.
There was a race that's kind of famous in Bullitt County history of, I think his name was Jacob Peacock. Jacob's not right, but Peacock was his last name. And he was a worker out here, and they were meeting at like a Liars Club like they do nowadays, just over at a general store in Shepherdsville, some guys talking. And one of the other ones had bought him a new horse. And he was so proud of his horse that it was a fine racing horse. It could beat anything. And Mr. Peacock said, I can beat him. I can outrun that horse. And no, you can't do that. He was so proud of this horse. And they made a bet. So they raced from Shepherdsville to what's the county fairgrounds now, Evergreen Cemetery, some people knows, but it's raced from Shepherdsville to there. And the guy won. Peacock won. The thing that he knew better than the guy who owned the horse, it was a fancy trotting type horse. And they're great for a quarter mile, a mile, but they really don't want to go a long distance. And Mr. Peacock had herded sheep and stuff by foot to Louisville, to the market, because you didn't have the big trucks in those days yet. And so he actually by foot had walked back and forth there, and he would herding these different animals. So he was built up. He was kind of an early track star in a way. So he went and bought him a new pair, one of these newfangled sets of tennis shoes. They were just starting to call them tennis shoes, and put those on. And it was quite a story of the race, but he actually made it. So,
that's just knowing the shortcuts, right?
I mean, they travel the same path, but he, and matter of fact, had to run through ice water, actually break the ice to get through. And the guy with the horse the other people that were following along and stuff, they were wanting to let him just, get they help him across the rivers. And the guy with the horse said, no, he's got to go through that icy water.
Yeah.
But he did, and he made it. He's tough old guy.
It's like our own version of Tortoise and the Hare.
Yeah, it really is. It really
Yeah.
is. You're a good point. And I think he won a suit and $25 or something.
Well,
for that.
good for him.
Well, that's that'd been a major prize, $25 back
Pretty
then.
good money.
Yeah, like, hey, it's worth doing it.
The actual year's escaping me right now, but not all that long ago, 1919 or so, if I remember right.
Yeah. Well,
Hey.
I know that we need to wrap up.
Yeah.
I do want to ask before we go, kind of how are you spending your time now? What are some of your...
I'm more and more enjoying being just an old guy. So I've backed away from a lot of the things, Lions Clubs. I still do some of that, and I still work on, right now, Friday afternoons at the museum. But fortunately, again, we've got some good volunteers working there that keeps that going well. And so I'm proud that that's kind of a legacy thing that a lot of us have worked on. But yeah, 70 years old, I'm mostly being an old guy now and playing with grandkids or whatever.
You want to say that website one more time?
BullittCountyHistory.org. Long word, but memorable. BullittCountyHistory.org.
David, I really appreciate you coming in and seeing us today and taking your time to sit down and talk with us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we'll get this up for you here.